Hello everyone. If you're here for a half hour of some Victorian-era fun, then you're in the right place. My name's Rewa. I'm a senior park aide in interpretation at Wilder Ranch State Park, and I'm joining you on this rainy day from Wilder so that together we can step back in time, almost 150 years ago, to think about what families were doing back then and how they had fun. So that's what we're going to be up to today. At the end of this program, we're going to be doing a Victorian-era craft. And so if you want to participate, you can go ahead and take a moment now to gather some supplies that you'll need. You just need two things in order to participate in this craft. One is a large button, at least the size of a quarter, as big as you can find. And two, you'll need a piece of long, thin string, about 4 feet long, and it's about as thin as this piece here, to give you a sense. That's about the kind of string that you want to find. So if you can gather those two things, you'll be ready for the craft that we'll be doing later today. So we'll have a moment now to let our visitors log in, but I'll take a second just to let you know some important updates about the state of Wilder Ranch State Park closures currently. So as you are probably aware, we're taking all possible precautions in order to keep our volunteers, our staff, and our visitors safe, which is why at this point we have temporarily closed the visitor center, the parking lots, the campground, and we've ceased our in-person programs and school tours, which is why we are so excited that we get to find this way to connect with you digitally right in your own home, to bring your public lands to you and to stay connected. So thank you for tuning in for this live stream. It couldn't happen without you on the other end of the line, and it would be really lonely here at Wilder Ranch without you tuning in. So if you do end up coming out to the state parks, because you might know that the trails are open at this point, please keep in mind the safety guidelines that have been published by California State Parks, which you can find on their website or on our social media. Those guidelines include 5 things. 1, bring soap so that you can wash your hands frequently. 2, use hand sanitizer. 3, maintain a 6-foot distance from other park users. 4, don't congregate in large groups of people, more than 10 people at a time. And 5, if you're sick, stay home. So those are 5 ways that you can help keep California State Parks safe places to be. And thank you for all doing your part. So I think as we're allowing folks to join in, we'll start getting started in a couple moments. I'll say again to everyone who's just joined, I'm Rewa, Senior Park Aide at Wilder Ranch State Park, and today we're going to be stepping back in time, exploring this 1859 Gothic Revival farmhouse around me, to think about what families back in the 1800s used to do for fun. At the end of this program, we're going to do a Victorian-era craft as well, so take a moment now as you're settling in to grab the supplies that you'll need. There's only 2 things that you'll need to participate in this craft. 1 is a large button, the larger the bigger. The bigger the better, is what I mean. And the second thing you'll need is a piece of string, a nice long piece of string, about 4 feet, and pretty thin, kind of like this piece of string here, to give you a sense. So go ahead and grab those supplies, and those will be coming in handy later in the program when we do our Victorian-era craft. So I think we're about ready to get started, yeah? So let's dive in. As I said, and now that we have more folks here, I'm Rewa, Senior Park Aide at Wilder Ranch State Park, and I'm really excited to join you for this very special live-streamed tour where we get to have some Victorian-era fun, looking back in time as we explore this Gothic Revival farmhouse. And as we get started, I want to take a moment to recognize that here at Wilder Ranch State Park, we are on native land. So right now I'm standing on the ancestral homeland of the Awaswas-speaking Weepy people. And we take a moment at the beginning of all of our programs to pay respect to the elders past and present who've been stewarding this land through the generations. And take a moment to recognize that we're guests here. And as guests, we have a responsibility to learn how to be good stewards. One of the ways that we're working on protecting this piece of land is through right here, designating this place as a cultural historic preserve, which means that all these buildings surrounding me are protected so that they can keep telling their stories into the future. Now, the building we're standing in right now was built in 1859, and it's a Gothic Revival farmhouse. The first building the oldest building on the property that you'd be able to see right outside these windows. I don't know, it's kind of rainy and bright out there. I don't know that you can really see, but it's just right next door. That building was built in the 1830s, okay? And that was the first building that was built here that was used for dairy ranching. And the 1830s was back when this piece of California was actually a part of Mexico. But 40 years later, this dairy ranch had landed in the hands of a man named D.D. Wilder, hence why we call it now Wilder Ranch. And D.D. Wilder was a very skillful and inventive person. And it was because of that inventiveness and ingenuity that this ranch became so well renowned across the state of California. Now, I have a question for you. And you might notice that you can actually type comments into this video. So go ahead and type in your answer to this below. Do you know someone in your life who is always up on the latest technology? If you can think of someone, go ahead and type it in. Do you know someone, maybe it's your aunt or your cousin, who always has the newest gadgets, or who, as soon as they hear that the newest model of the next smartphone is about to come out, they already have it pre-ordered. They've been saving up their pennies. Do you know someone like that? Well, I bet you do. And what I'm here to tell you is that D.D. Wilder was that kind of guy. He always was looking out for the latest technology. You can bet that when the De Laval's continuous cream separator first came out, D.D. Wilder had his eyes on it. And not even that, he'd already pre-ordered it for the ranch. What was a continuous cream separator? I can't really tell you what it did, but you know what it was? It was state of the art. And it's because he was always looking out for the state-of-the-art technology and incorporating it into the operation of the ranch. That's why this place was able to create highly efficient, beautiful products. They were creating butter and dairy of all different kinds, and it won them fame across the state of California. Now, I'm telling you all of this because I don't want to talk to you about D.D. Wilder. Actually, I want to tell you about D.D. Wilder's son, Melvin. So Melvin was a lot like his father in that he was always tinkering with things and he was very inventive. For example, in high school, he built himself a whole cabinet for a phonograph, and he also ordered a 110-volt Thomson dynamo generator from a Sears catalog that he built himself. Do you know people kind of like that? Maybe you know a high schooler who is always, deconstructing the old family computer and building it back together, or who is in the robotics club. Melvin was that kind of kid. And we're going to get to see today some of the wacky and funny things that he got up to with all of his technology innovations. He actually ended up going to college at the nearby Stanford University to study electrical engineering. He loved it so much, and he brought that skill back to the ranch in order to help his dad, D.D. Wilder, electrify the ranch. So this became a lifelong passion of his. But let's go ahead and start to explore this building a little bit so that we can pick up on some of those creative and humorous inventions that Melvin created. So right now we're in the bedroom, and I'm going to let you look around for a moment. And as we look around, go ahead and take a step back in time with me. Put yourself in Melvin's shoes. Imagine yourself in this building that was built in the 1850s. That's over 150 years ago. It's 30 years before electricity came to Santa Cruz, and about a century before electricity was common in rural parts of America. So I invite you to step back in time as we look around and explore, all right? Okay, so here we are in the bedroom. And as we look around, go ahead and think to yourself, what is different than your bedroom today? And do you notice anything suspicious or strange? Especially, look out for what's weird, because that's what I want to talk about. So we can see this writing desk over here with a violin on top, which might make you think that this was a musical family, and it was. And next week we're going to talk about music in the Wilder family. So we can see some stamps, old ledgers, a pencil sharpener, some inks. We've got some photographs on the walls. See what you can notice that's different than your room. And I'm going to take a moment to look a little bit closer at these photos here. Here we have Melvin Wilder. And we can see at his feet his dog Scat leaning up against the bed. All right, so what about this photograph over here? What can we see? Again, we have Melvin Wilder seated at this writing desk that we actually have right here. And at his foot is his dog again. This time, what's he have in his mouth? It looks like a letter that's been addressed, and the dog is wearing a hat as if he's about to deliver the mail. Okay. Curious, interesting. I feel like something fishy is going on here. What about this photo? What do we see going on? It looks like the dog again. This time he's reading a book. And I think he even has glasses on his face. Do you see that? A very learned dog, clearly. This one's my favorite. Here we have the dog playing the violin, also with glasses on his face. Interesting. All right. What do you all think about that? This is clearly not your average dog. This is a photo of Scat, who was Melvin's beloved pet and also clearly the butt of a lot of his jokes. Because what you maybe didn't realize until now is that Melvin was an amateur photographer. And perhaps you've done something similar at home if you've ever taken home movies, or maybe you've, taken photographs of invented scenes where you can create a little window into a reality that isn't quite real, but maybe even more fantastic. Melvin loved doing that kind of thing with photography. And including his dog Scat, whose intelligence maybe rivaled that of his owner. So the cool thing about photography is that it only made it to the United States in about the 1830s. It started out with something called daguerreotypes, which is where you were going to essentially burn an image onto a piece of metal, which was pretty awesome, but a little bit cumbersome, to hang that on your wall. Each one was one of a kind. You couldn't make 50 copies and send out your school portrait to all of your relatives. So eventually that process evolved, and by the time Melvin was in his 20s, you could get something that looked like this. In 1901, you got the number 2 Brownie from Kodak. So this right here is a camera. It's about the size of a lunchbox, small lunchbox. It's pretty compact. I don't know if you are fans of taking photos, but think about, what do you take photos with? Maybe you take photos with your smartphone or a tablet, Or maybe you've got your grandfather's old Pentax K1000 or a Polaroid. Maybe you're using film. Or maybe you have a DSLR Canon with a telephoto lens and you've got the most up-to-date gear. Today, there's a lot of options for taking photographs. Back in Melvin's time, you used film. And film costs a lot of money. Each roll only had about 24 shots in it, which means that you couldn't take photos willy-nilly. You had to really pay attention to what you were going to take a photograph of because it took a lot of energy to develop. And so it's notable that Melvin found it important enough to take a photograph of Scat playing the violin or reading a book or answering the mail. And it says something about the Wilder family and their sense of humor and the ways that they got creative. So Melvin would have been using a camera kind of like this one here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it works. Okay, one of the coolest things I want to show you is that the viewfinder is right on top here. So you would hold it against your chest and you could look down at the view right here. And so let me show you. Maybe you can see. I'm actually going to show you this way. All right, so you probably can't see much in this little viewfinder here, but I'm going to move my hand over top. And can you see my hand through there? Can you see my fingers? And what you'll notice is that my fingers are pointing that direction, but in the camera, they're pointing the opposite direction, right? Interesting. Do any of you know why that is? Go ahead and type in your guesses about why this camera is flipping the images upside down. It's kind of interesting. What it has to do with is actually the lens. So the lens is this piece of glass here that's curved. And so as light rays are coming into the lens, really coming in this way, they're all going to be bent or refracted to a point, a focus point. And in the process, all of the images get flipped. Pretty wild. It's a really amazing piece of technology, this. Some other things that are cool about this is that, all right, so the light is coming in through this hole right here, through the shutter, and it's going to hit a piece of film. And so film has been made out of all different kinds of things over time, but inside this camera you would have had a spool or a scroll of a flexible plastic, and it had been coated with a substance that was reactive to light. So as your light was streaming in through this hole, it would hit that surface of film and a chemical reaction would start. And so depending on how bright the light was hitting each part of the film, a different amount of that chemical reaction would happen. And then at the end, you'd have this piece of film that you could develop into your photographic image. You would use this knob right here to turn through your scroll of film so that you could constantly have a fresh, clean sheet. And you could even adjust how much light was coming in using, let's see, the aperture here. These little metal pieces right on top. You could adjust that. How much light was coming in, how long it came in, and how wide this opening was. So your head is probably swimming at this point. You're like, oh my goodness, so much was going on inside this little box. And yeah, it was incredible. It's amazing. There's one other photo, though, that I want to show you before we run out of time. That's maybe my favorite photo that I've seen on this entire property. And so in order to see this image that Melvin created, we're going to go into the nursery right next door. All right, so I'll just walk you here past the living room and into the nursery. And this here is the special photo that I want to show you. All right, let's give you a good look. So, take a moment to look at this photo and see what you notice is amiss with it. What's wrong? What I'm seeing on the left is a beautiful photo of Dee Dee Wilder, Melvin's dad. looking very spiffy in his top hat as he mows the lawn, as one does. Well, actually, I don't wear my top hat when I'm mowing the lawn. Maybe you do. Actually, come to think of it, maybe that's a little bit suspicious right off the bat. And then across from him on the right is, wait, is that Dee Dee Wilder's evil twin? No, he didn't have a twin. That actually is Dee Dee Wilder himself. So how is it that there are two Dee Dee Wilders in this photo? Do y'all have a guess? Go ahead and type in your guesses. Let me know what you think. How in the world could you get two Dee Dee Wilders in this image? Was it maybe teleportation or cloning? Time travel? These would all be really good guesses. Actually, what it was Melvin was using what he knew about photography. And he was able to take two photos of his dad and then splice them together. And they were spliced together so well that you can't really even see that boundary. Maybe if you look really closely, you can kind of see right here where some of the sideboards of the house don't quite line up. But it's hard to tell. Honestly, I think this is a really beautiful example of some photographic trickery. And a really great illustration of the way that Melvin used to have a lot of fun. I saw someone guess double exposure. That was a really great guess because that was a practice that they used a lot in the Victorian era. And actually, if you're curious to see some other examples of some historic photographic nonsense and maybe get some ideas for yourself of projects to do, I recommend that you go ahead and do a Google image search for Victorian-era photograph tricks. They are outrageous. And also, I should warn you that there was a whole fad in the Victorian era of taking headless photographs. So if that's something that might turn your stomach, I would say beware. But note that no people were actually harmed in the creation of these photographs. They're just clever tricks. So this was your deep dive into the history of photography in the Victorian era and a look at some of the fun that the Wilders would have had back in that time. And since we're in the nursery, and I can see that we have some craft supplies here, let's go ahead and do a craft, yeah? If you all would like to join me, go ahead and grab your button and your string, and we're going to do a craft. I'll just get you situated and grab my supplies. All right, so first what you'll need is a large button. Because today we're going to create button spinners. This is a good sized button. It's about the size of a quarter, but if you can find one even bigger, that's great. The bigger the better. But don't worry, we're hoping that you can do this craft just using things that you find around your own home. So grab what you can and experiment. Try different size buttons, different size strings, and see what works for you. So next I'm going to grab a piece of string. I want it to be pretty thin. This is a good thickness right here. And it needs to be about 4 feet long. 3 feet if you're a little bit smaller than me, which you probably are. All right, so I have my string and I have my button. And what you're going to do is thread the string through 2 of the buttonholes. And because my button has 4 holes, I'm going to string it through the holes that are diagonally opposite from each other. Okay, so in one. All right, and out the other. Oops. So that's what that looks like. Okay, and then you'll thread it all the way through right to the end and tie a knot at the opposite end. So basically you have a button hanging on a string. Pretty straightforward at this point. Okay, so I have my button on my string. Now I'm going to pull the string out the other side so that the button is right in the middle. Okay, just like this. So that I can slip a couple fingers into the loops on either side, all right? Okay, and now this is where it gets good and a little bit dangerous, so don't whack anybody. But you're going to take your button on its string and you're going to start swinging it around. Okay, swinging it like this so that it gets all wound up, okay? Swing it a lot. You want it very wound up, but that'll work even better. And then once it's fully wound up, you're going to pull it apart, and then you'll see it starting to unwind. And then just before it unwinds totally, you'll let go. Give it a little bit of slack so that it can wind up again, and you'll see what happens. Oops, well, that didn't work. I'm gonna try it again. And I'll wind it up again without whacking myself in the face. All right, so we pull apart. There we go. Can you hear that? Do you see what's happening? So it's winding up and then unwinding and winding up and unwinding and on and on and on. And you can see I'm moving my hands out and back a little bit. I pull it out to unwind it, and just when it's about to be totally unwound, I then let go so that it has a little bit of slack to wind up again. And so it can go on forever like this. It's pretty cool. You can make it go faster or slower. So this is a button spinner. Ooh. Sometimes they make really good sounds. And this was the kind of craft that the Wilders would have done in the Victorian era. Now, don't worry if you're not getting it going right away, that's okay. Some of our younger docents, like Nora in particular, are really amazing at this. They're naturals, but don't worry, I didn't figure out how to do it at first. I had to practice a lot, and I mean a lot. So keep experimenting, try a different piece of string, try a different button, experiment, see what you can get. And if this tutorial went too quickly, don't worry. I recommend that you check out our Instagram or our Facebook afterwards so that you can see written directions of this craft and so that you can share it with your friends. All right, so that was our Victorian button spinner. And I want to thank you all so much for joining me for this little bit of afternoon Victorian fun. It's really a pleasure to get to spend time with you and keep you connected to the park. I hope that you had some fun too. And we can't wait until we see you out here in person. But in the meantime, keep tuning in for our Sunday live streams. And again, I'm Rewa, Senior Park Aide at Wilder Ranch State Park. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I can't wait to step back in time with you next week. Take care.